Great. Hey everybody, what is up? This is my first YouTube stream, so we'll see how it goes. I have done streaming. I've actually played with OBS since 2013, which is pretty cool, but it's always been just like some gaming kind of stuff, not really talking and being the host really quite as much. Let's see what we got here. It's a cool sound. So pretty much the idea for these streams is each week I will have a story or some kind of lesson to go over. I'll go through that, and then we can do some Q&A, which is pretty fun and cool. I really like teaching and interacting with people, so I think this will be a really fantastic outlet for me, and I'm excited to do it. And tonight's topic is simply my musical upbringing. How did I learn all of the things that I learned? Because there is quite a bit I know. By the way, sorry if there's a fan in the background. I don't really want to break the continuity of talking to go turn it off. Let me know in the chat if you hear it. So, everything starts in about 2003 for me. In 2003, I was in third grade, and it was offered to me to do music lessons, which is like, okay, cool, that sounds great. And the option there were, I don't remember what all of the instruments options were, but I ended up doing flute of all things. And flute is a very difficult instrument in the first place, and I did it only for a matter of weeks, and this is a very important lesson for perhaps anybody watching who doesn't know how to read notes or read music and interpret it. And I quit flute after only a couple of weeks because I didn't know how to read notes. I had learned fingering, so I knew like, oh, press this to get this note, but I couldn't. You'll kind of hit a wall if all you can do is fingerings, especially with classical music, because in my opinion, the processing of numbers to playing is slower than you can do with notes, which is why classical musicians and other musicians practice something called sight reading. So after flute in third grade, the next instrument I did for a matter of months at that time was piano. And I was getting a little bit smarter. I was in fourth grade now. And I learned a couple of notes this second time, which was an improvement over the first time. And the teacher said, well, he's got a lot of potential, and I think he'd do really well like with jazz music. The only problem is if you want to go talking to my mom, take this kid to go see jazz music, is all those guys play at, 1 a.m. and, these crazy late hours that kids aren't up in. Hey, Tim. And so I never went to a jazz show as a kid, though that would have been interesting. I always wonder how my life would have turned out. But I learned fingerings, and then I learned some notes. I was like okay at notes. And after that, I moved from Pennsylvania to Texas. And in Texas, there was no music program. Whatever. There wasn't a music program in fifth grade. And I would constantly get in trouble for just like, tapping on the desk, because I mean, even since I was a kid, I would just hear all this music in my head. I always say that I think that most people get a voice in their head. I got like half voice, half music. And I didn't have any way to express that or get it out of me onto an instrument. So as soon as the option became available in sixth grade, that's really when my formal music career started, or my formal musical training started. And I went in, and they had these days at the middle school where you could try like any of the instruments. And so I tried string bass and I tried trumpet, and I thought both were like really cool. But I was lied to. I was told that you can only do one of them. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do bass because it's low and powerful and cool. And lo and behold, the next year, or the school year comes around, and there's a girl doing both band and orchestra, which I was like so frustrated, even as a little kid when I found that out. But there's a great reason that it all works out. So I started string bass in 6th grade, and I grew up, upper middle class. I'll just say that. And they put most of the kids in private lessons, and violin is a much more difficult instrument than string bass is. So I was always bored in class, and I would play while the teacher was talking. I played very quietly. And now as a musician, and I guess, making my own music and having, my little studio monitor set up here in this room, I understand why that would bug someone a lot. But I would always play with it while the teacher was talking, because especially beginner string-based music is exceptionally easy. So I was in private lessons, and this is where it gets really interesting. Even at this early stage, I would start to get conflicting information about how to play something from my private lessons teacher versus how the orchestra director would want me to play it. And so I'd, go to orchestra class, and I would, play it one way, and then I'd bring it into my private lessons, and they'd say, play it this way. And as a kid, I didn't know how to deal with that. And I just thought, well, my teacher plays the instrument, so clearly they know better, and I'm going to do what they said. So I was kind of defiant. And the other twist to this story is that the same teacher that taught the middle school also taught the high school. So, and also, my older brother is he's the whole reason I got into music, and I got into rock music, and I'll loop back on that in a second. So me and the high school orchestra teacher, who was also the middle school orchestra teacher, kind of had a rocky relationship from the start, because she could see that I had a predilection towards music, but also that I was horribly behaved because I didn't know how to deal with the difference between what my private lessons teacher would say and what somebody else would say. And so let's hop out of the orchestra story for a second. So I got introduced to Dream Theater and Symphony X in 2006. I don't remember exactly what day it was, but my older brother, his friend was into this music, and I got in the car, and the two songs that I remember hearing were Pull Me Under and a Symphony X song called Eve of Seduction. I just remember those drums came on. Dun 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 dun, and I was like, wow, this is so powerful. And I literally remember this rush of energy coming up my arms and just being like, whoa, what is that? I totally want to do it. So that's how I got introduced to this music. And as soon as I had an iPod, I would just listen to Dream Theater stuff on repeat. And what always attracted me to this music was that it wasn't predictable. And I hadn't done any music theory yet, but it was pop music was, it just sounded simple to me. It was oh, here's that part again. But when I listen to Dream Theater, and they've got, odd accents, and they've got, I don't even really want to say odd meters. It's just the more interesting accent patterns. Or I remember in 7th grade when I was in a computer class, there used to be this site I think it was called Groove Shark. And Groove Shark was just one of those early music sharing sites. And I found this band called Planet X. And Planet X, if you don't know, is fusion metal kind of stuff. And it's got Derek Sherinian and Virgil Donati and, who's the other guy? They've had some really awesome bass players. Billy Sheehan's played in there. There's a guy named Rufus Philpott, who's got some, he played on I just know the song's called Red Air. It was off of one of Virgil's newer albums. And I was just like, wow, this bass tone is awesome, and this playing is unreal, and it sounds like an alien world, and this is so cool. So that music always lit my brain on fire from a very young age, but I didn't know how to get to it because my parents had kind of pushed me towards classical music. So that's how I got introduced to metal and, technical kind of music. So 7th grade rolls around, and my birthday comes up, and I say, hey, I want an electric bass. So I got a Fender jazz bass starter kit, and my older brother, again, he had Guitar Pro, and he had got a guitar by this time, I think. And so I would go in his room on rare occasions when I could and we would download whatever songs off of Ultimate Guitar, and then I could, look at the bass lines. And it was a very funny thing, really, when I look back at it, because I was like this classically trained bass player who now had an electric bass, which is sort of an improvisational instrument. And I would look at like, I remember one of the first songs I looked at was Message in a Bottle by the Police. And it's just, whatever. And, thinking, oh, this is exactly what he's playing the whole time, every single time, and he's got this sheet music perfectly memorized. But that's not like how rock music works. It's all memorized. It's, chords, and, that's kind of it. Here's your 4 chords, go through it. So then one of the next songs I started learning was Erotomania by Dream Theater, which was quite a step up. Whatever it is, some crazy thing. And I played that at like an orchestra party, I remember. There's probably a video of it long lost out there somewhere. Let me just listen to the audio levels on the guitar. Oh, it's pretty good, actually. Okay, great. I didn't get a chance to check it before we punched the live button. So, recap so far. So I did a little bit of flute. I did a little bit of piano. Then there was no music for a year. And then I started on string bass because I couldn't do band. After 7th grade, I'd really taken an interest in electric bass, and I continued the, frayed relationship with, the middle school, high school orchestra director. And then high school rolled around. I was still in orchestra. I wasn't going to not do music. There was no way. That was my whole entire friend group. But one thing that had happened in 6th grade was there was a class called Discovery. And Discovery rotated you through a couple different classes. I think it was like a woodshop class, choir, which I thought about doing and then was discouraged from doing, unfortunately. Don't let people discourage you from doing what you want to do. Like, if you want to do choir or you want to sing or whatever, like, please, go do it. Or piano or I don't know, clarinet or string bass. Like, go do that thing. Don't let anybody tell you not to do it, because I wonder how differently my life would have turned out if in 6th grade I got to start guitar in 2006 instead of getting to start guitar in 2019. Of course, I have a lot of wonderful background, and I'm extremely grateful for it. But you look at great players, and they usually have a much longer. They've just got a lot of hours on the instrument, and you can't beat that. So after where are we at? So we got into string bass, and then I got into some computer classes, and I was also selected for kind of a smaller special computer class in 8th grade. And that is when I learned to do a little bit of like web coding. We did some like video projects. So I had been kind of playing with video editing and filming from like an early age, and even making my mom got like a digital camera, and my brother and I would use Windows Movie Maker and make little silly videos, all lost to time. So yeah, technology has always been a big interest for me, and music has always been a big interest for me. It's weird doing these chords on 7th string. A lot of talking tonight with no questions. We'll get there. So we did computer class, 9th grade. We get into orchestra, and I'm really excited. And what was interesting about orchestra and that dynamic was that all of my older brother's friends already knew who I was. And my older brother's 4 years older than me. So when I moved into 9th grade, he moved on to college. And a lot of his friends were immediately friendly to me. And I was in this older friend group, which was really cool. Like, I felt very accepted among these older kids. And that was I don't know. That was really big for me, because I never really had a ton of friends growing up. So, but there was an issue, and the issue was that you were only allowed to be in there was 2 orchestras. There was like the lower orchestra and then the upper orchestra, and I was only allowed to be in the lower orchestra in your first year. And then you could audition and then get placed in the second orchestra. But I had become so, frankly, cocky in ninth grade, and I thought I knew better than the teacher, which I didn't, and I thought I was super good, that I wasn't even allowed to audition for the orchestra group that all of my friends were in, which really sucked. And I think I had my lunch schedule. There's 4 lunches at this gigantic high school I went to, which we'll get into which high school it was in a minute, because that's important. And I think I had lunch with them, which was super cool, but I couldn't be with them in any other way. And so I was kind of cut off from like my friend group, which was like really hard. And, I had some friends, but not a ton of them. Most of my friends were in the upper orchestra, and I wasn't allowed to audition for it. Now, ninth grade was ninth grade, and then we roll into 10th grade. And 10th grade is when things came to a head. And about, I don't know how long, I think the school year is like 26 weeks, and we were about a quarter of the way through there. Now, things came to a head about a quarter of the way through the school year, and me and the orchestra director had a talk, and I was playing during class or whatever, and I was still in the lower orchestra, and she said, you need to change your behavior or you need to get out of the orchestra. And right at that time, a friend of mine had moved up from 8th grade to 9th grade. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And we reconnected. And she showed me how awesome band was. And I was like, cool. This is so cool. I remember being so fascinated, genuinely, by the idea of playing an instrument and moving around. I was like, that's a really cool concept because it's going beyond just playing the instrument. You have this secondary aspect. And, guitar is caught on the cable. We have this secondary aspect. So when the orchestra director and I had that conversation, I was like, screw this, I'm out of here, man. So I got out of the orchestra, I got kicked out, and I wasn't allowed to go immediately into band, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. Those low, nice chords. So I wasn't allowed to go right into band. And I think I ended up in an HTML coding class, another computer class, which was, I had a pretty good teacher. We started to do some JavaScript stuff in there, but I totally didn't get the programming thing. I was good at HTML. I was not good at programming. So during that time, I started trying different band instruments. A bunch of people encouraged me to try saxophone, so I think I tried sax for like 2 seconds, and I was like, nah, this ain't it. I tried tuba for like a minute, and then I was like, this is cool, but it's the same thing as bass, and I didn't want to be stuck, playing boring bass lines in, classical music. And also having a gigantic instrument to carry around. And I tried trumpet, but I just found trumpet a little bit harsh at that point. And so I ended up gravitating towards French horn. And French horn was really cool, and I'm really grateful for my time on French horn. There is, playing in a brass section, a good brass section, which we'll get into here in a minute, because I have some wonderful experiences with French horn. Playing in a really good brass section that is tight, and you're playing orchestral repertoire at 100 whatever decibels, where you're getting like hearing damage, it is a powerful, awesome experience when, the low brass locks in and you look over at your trumpet buddies and you're like, here we go. Like, I just got chills talking about it. I'm thinking about playing, Prokofiev, Romeo and Juliet, dun da 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 dun dun. So playing brass is a really cool thing. We'll get into why I left brass. Don't worry, we'll get there. So I got a mouthpiece for French horn, and I just started practicing buzzing. I still have my mouthpiece buried somewhere. The final one I used. You trade up and you try different things over the years. And I convinced my parents to get me a French horn, which was cool. So I started just practicing on the French horn, and I started taking lessons, and I said, so this was my fourth instrument by this point. Yeah, flute, and then piano, and then bass, and then electric bass, sort of. And then we get over to French horn, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this new instrument now. And when I do this new instrument, I'm going to make a very conscious effort to really practice intentionally instead of just showing up and playing. And one of the things that's very, very, like, significantly more important with brass instruments than string instruments is warming up. You know, you'll do, like, lip flutters where you just like that. I would do it for, like, 1 or 2 minutes before I would play, you know, or, just run your tongue, because it's just this circular muscle on your mouth. And you're putting a lot of force on it when you play a brass instrument. So I was really diligent at warm-ups, and I just started taking lessons. And by the end of the 10th grade year, the same year I got kicked out of orchestra, I was going on band trips and playing with the band, which was like crazy, because the band program I was in, the Marcus High School band program in Flower Mound, Texas, that program was not just like state winning, it was multi-time back-to-back state winning, which is really cool. So it was a really very well-run band program with a lot of contribution from parents, time-wise and money-wise, which is, I'm really fortunate and grateful to have been part of that program. And in private lessons still. So, you know, I went through music in high school when I went through a good program. I didn't go through like a performing arts program, and especially I wasn't doing any solo playing whatsoever, and that's very important. So I audition for band for 11th grade, and I get in, and there's 4 bands. The band program was massive. There's the top band, I think it was called Symphonic Band, was the second to top, and then there was concert band, and then there was, I forget, there was like the lowest band class. And I scored into concert band, the second one, and I didn't even score last chair. I scored like middle of the pack, which for someone who had been playing the instrument for a matter of months, versus the people who'd been doing it from 6th grade, and who everybody in the whole school knew that you can't get into band if you didn't do it beforehand. And I think this is much more especially true of percussion. But I got into band, and this made a lot of people very angry with me. Really, truly upset. They were jealous of how I had placed them out, you know, when I had only been playing a matter of months. And, you know, what could I say other than I practiced? And, I got into a really good groove, I remember, in 11th grade. And I would get up at 6. I would slam one of these awful Walmart CVS brand protein shake things and make coffee, and then show up at the band hall as soon as it opened at 7 a.m. and do my warm-ups in the middle of the band hall. So I was very dedicated. And unfortunately, the same person who brought me into band, among other people and other experiences I had, generated a number of rumors about me, which led to absolute disaster in many of my high school friendships, that was a really tough time. I went through multiple friend groups because of rumors that were made up about me and that I proved to these various people in different ways. So the result of those rumors, unfortunately, is that I never even got to audition for the top band, which sucked because the top band was taking trips and playing significant shows. I forget the names of them by now, but they performed at UNT. I think there's some big, band conference they bring all the best, high school bands to. And, I could have played in that, but these rumors didn't allow me that experience. So another experience that I had in 12th grade was, I wanted to play all these little brass quartets and quintets and all this kind of stuff, but everybody who I wanted to do that with was in the top band, and they were busy with their top band stuff, and they didn't want to do it. Anytime I asked them, they were just too busy. Or they didn't want to do it. More often, and thank goodness, it was a too busy kind of answer. So that was another really disappointing experience for me in the classical music world, where it was like, I'm so passionate about music, but I can't find other people who are as passionate about every aspect of music or putting together these different fun little things as I am. And I thought that all that would change when I went to music school. And my music school experience starts with Texas Christian University. I went there for 1 year. And, you do lessons. Basically, the way the college music audition process works is a very formalized process where you apply, you're applying to the college as well as to the music school. So you apply to the college and you also you audition for the music school. So, you prepare standard repertoire, like various orchestral excerpts, Mozart, and yada, yada, yada. They want to see how you play. So I auditioned for, I think, 5 schools. Yeah, it was University of Houston, University of Texas at Austin, University of Cincinnati, SMU, and TCU. And I think I got into 3 out of 5. I think I got into I got into University of Houston. I got into Texas Christian University, and I think I got a maybe from UT Austin. I don't remember. I wasn't jiving with that school. I think the teacher was great, but I'm just not a sports guy, and everything was like Longhorns, I'm just like, I don't know if that's me. And, I think a lot of this comes out of being a young person and not knowing really how to evaluate these things. It's really hard. I mean, how do you pick a college? How do you pick what you're going to do? And then how do you pick the person who's going to be your mentor? Not just your teacher, but your mentor for the next 4 years and the most formative years in your musical career. That's a huge decision to make. That's when you're going to learn all the standard repertoire, the Strauss and the Mozart and, what else? Glier and, Beethoven and, all the orchestral excerpts. And by the end of the year at TCU, which was a great school, I just wasn't a good student, frankly. And I wasn't a good match for the horn teacher that I had there. I just wasn't a great student, and we weren't a great match. There's other people who have great experience. Great, fantastic, zero harm. And I called my parents, and I broke down, and because I had this realization, I was like, everybody who's in an orchestra, who has an orchestra job, went to like a top music school. They didn't go to, TCU. Like, you don't see that in, the San Francisco Philharmonic or whatever orchestras out there. I'm so sorry, I forget all these names by now. So I said, I really want to audition for these other schools. Will you support me in it? And thankfully, my parents said yes. And a whole month past all of the music audition deadlines for University of Cincinnati and Indiana University, I was granted an audition, which was like unheard of. So I really worked hard on these auditions. I remember a lot of times I'd practice from 11 to 12 in a room in TCU to prepare for these auditions. So I'd stay up really late to prepare for these auditions because I had a shorter timeline, and I traveled with my dad, and I think the Indiana University audition was first. So I did that one, and that was the best audition of my life, really. And I love retelling this story because I auditioned for Jeff. I'm so sorry I forget your last name, Jeff. You were awesome. And Jeff is a fantastic teacher. He's especially a fantastic motivator and mindset teacher for music. So I auditioned for Jeff, and also in the room was Dale Clevenger, who had been the principal horn of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for 50 years, an absolute musical legend. And when I finished playing, Jeff looked at Dale, and he pulled his glasses down, and he goes, "Well, should we tell him?" And yeah, Dale pulls his glasses down, and he says, "I would take you in a second." And that's a really cool musical moment because I nailed that audition. I felt really good about it, and the results matched the perception. So this is a very cool moment. And I auditioned for went over state, and I auditioned for University of Cincinnati, and I got in there as well. And by that time, it came down to, when I chose the schools, it came down to, I really wanted to, awesome, Michael, great stuff. Hope you're playing some of my exercises. All right. So what it came down to with the choice between the schools is that Indiana University had a much larger, I think around 40 students, whereas University of Cincinnati had around 20-something students. And so I would be kind of almost like an extra. So a lot of my credits transferred to University of Cincinnati, which was really lucky because that doesn't always happen for people. And I still graduated barely on a 4-year timeline, and we'll air out that story because I want to be transparent and clear with you guys about exactly all of this stuff. I don't want to be put on a pedestal in any ways. If you like the stuff that I do and you find it helpful, fantastic. That's all I want. Is I want this stuff to be a lot more equitable, because I'm extremely lucky in my musical upbringing. Having school music programs, getting to go to music school, that's something that not everybody gets to do. And I'm really grateful for it, and that's a big motivator for why I share it here on YouTube, is to be the teacher that I wish I had. So ended up doing University of Cincinnati, and went through music school. I learned advanced music theory and music history. My hardest, most advanced class was an opera history, where we would talk for literally an hour or hour and a half. I think it was an hour and a half about why it was so important that in this particular Mozart opera, him using this certain key change represented the shift from the classical era into the romantic era, where we're starting to break what are called common practice music theory rules. And so that was a really big deal. And that class and the advanced music theory class really got me to look at music and really life in a whole new way. And I don't mean that in some cheesy, way. Because I remember going to the art museum with my dad when we visited the school, and they had, a section for modern art, and there's some big canvas with 3 colors of blue that, you look at it and you go, oh, anyone could have painted that. But when you understand a piece of art in the context of the time that it was created and what are the tools that the artist is using and why they're using them, then everything takes on an entirely different meaning. And this is when you start to get a really sophisticated sort of view on art, instead of just, oh, it's a painting of 3 blue lines and it's titled Sad, or for whatever reason. So those were especially formative. Now in college, I also saved the day, and I think my junior year, because there was some electronics that needed to be hooked up, and there's this giant rack mount thing that nobody knew how to hook up, and I just kind of intuitively figured it out, and I plugged the right thing in and saved the day. And one of the guys who was supposed to manage that system ended up talking to me, because as a student you're not supposed to fiddle with their stuff. So and he was like, if you know that kind of stuff, you should do a digital media minor. You should really consider that. I was like, oh, okay. So I was back into doing video editing, and in music school, a really formative thing for me as a business person, because I am a freelance marketer by day, and then I do the guitar stuff at nights and weekends for now, right? I love my work. I love all of this stuff. It's fantastic, and there's no plans for any of it to go anywhere. Guitar is not going away, marketing's not going away. I like doing both. And so I ended up doing a video class and some audio classes, and I'd done an audio class in my first year of college as well, where I really started to learn. Those audio classes in my first year of college were so important that I actually still have the textbooks, and it's one of the only college classes that I still have the textbooks from, and it was all about the fundamentals of how sound works. What is compression and rarefaction? What is a Nyquist frequency? What does it mean to have a DAW and a digital recording interface? And signal chain, and what's a noise floor, and just all of these basic foundational awesome things. And then we did a little tiny bit of synth programming. I think in Massive. I don't know, some synth. And I also had some piano classes in college, which I excelled in. I greatly enjoyed piano classes as an adult. So we did that, and we did some music. And now the real shift in college for me was that I started a video business, and I serviced quite a lot of the recitals with recording. And it all started, I had a Zoom H2N. You can look up that device if you want. And it's a little black, kind of all-in-one recorder. And I knew about microphone placement, and I knew about microphone patterns. And so I just started recording people with just that, kind of for free. I think I did 2 for free maybe. And then I did, $30 and $40, and I was recording people. And I saved up my bookstore money job money, and I bought a really, really awful video camera. Like, it shot probably worse video than an iPhone, but like I was the dude with the camera now, and I had a microphone, and I was cheap. I think I sold that for $80 at the time, and I would do some little fade ins and fade outs, and people really appreciated that. And after a while of doing that, I was like, hey, I really like doing this. And, if I just had better gear, then I could charge more, and I could expand my business. I was quite the enterprising businessman. Excuse me. So I saved up some more bookstore money, and I also ran a crowdfunding campaign, and I got a laptop. I got the audio interface that's sitting on my desk right now. I got my camera that I use. This is it right back here. Hold on. I got to go over to OBS. This camera right here, Sony a6300. I bought that, and I bought the lens, and then I got it to where I was charging, I think, $140, $160 for every recording that I did, and I was making some pretty okay money as like a college kid. I was making, a couple $100 a month. I think I calculated one time I was making $40 an hour, which was super cool. And so end of college, there's a really funny thing that happens where they put you in a practice room for 10 years where you practice, and then at the very end of all of that, they go, okay, get out on stage. Now go play your heart out. And you've never played in front of people. And if you want to get into the neuroscience of why it's so easy to play in the practice room, but it's so much harder to play in front of people, the neuroscience is called context. Your brain is used to performing one way in a particular context, and then you go over to a different context, and the brain is like, hey, this is a very unfamiliar environment. We don't know how to do this. So it's a big secret. Not even my parents know. I don't think I've ever specifically told them this, but I actually failed my first music recital. I did not play well. I have the videos of it. I have the audio recordings. My buddy helped me out. I've got 2 camera angles, and I have not edited those videos for 10 years or 6 years. So that was a very weird experience because nobody fails their recitals. What? And, I had started reading a book called The 4-Hour Workweek at the time, and I had this little, 2-cylinder Honda engine that was running I'm going to be an orchestral musician, and I'm going to audition. And then I read that book, and I was like, oh my God, all of the things that I want in life are completely not aligned with playing classical music as a living. I mean, it's going to be very hard to drive a sports car, fly airplanes, which, I'm grateful, that my grandfather passed down an airplane to my dad. And so I've gotten to learn quite a bit about flying by flying with my dad, which is cool. But I'm not probably going to be able to do those things if I'm trying to just play French horn. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I started watching, freelancer content, digital nomad stuff on YouTube. I was like, okay, yeah, like I could do HTML stuff. So I got back into the HTML thing for a little bit. I learned a little bit of Bootstrap. But I was really good at servicing people with video. So I redid my recital a couple weeks later, and I played much better. I didn't record it, and I passed, which was great. And then on top of that, in music school, you also have something called your board, and the board is probably the scariest thing that any music student goes through. And basically, there are passages in orchestral music that are known for being really hard, or you have to demonstrate a very particular technique when you play them. And so you prepare, I don't know, around 10 of these things, and then they'll call them up out of order, some random order. They're like, why don't you play number 1, number 5, number 7, and number 8? And then they make a determination off of that. And I passed my board, but I was met with a ton of skepticism. It felt like I was very close to not getting my degree because of how I had presented myself and my interest in business over music at the time, because of watching students who were pursuing master's and doctoral degrees, how stressful it was to get a gig that was not paying as much, and I was doing great money over here as a video guy. I was like, I've got it made, man. I was super naive. I was super, super, super naive to how the world worked and how to manage my relationships in a good way. And I've grown a lot since then, and I grew a lot through that. And I'm super grateful for my teachers and mentors and all my time through music school. But I think looking back on it, if I had to place, I don't know, the blame somewhere of, like, I guess why I got into doing guitar so late, which is what I wanted to do in 2006 when I first heard Dream Theater and Symphony X. I was like, that is cool, I want to do that. I think I just didn't know how to speak up for myself as a kid, and I didn't know how to really go after what I wanted, and that's something I've learned as an adult now. But the bright side to this journey is that I've learned all of these wonderful video editing skills. I got a lot of excellent audio training. I've got a great background in music theory, and there's so much good that has come of it that I don't look back on any of the journey with any sort of regret or pain. I mean, there's a little bit of frustration, like, man, what would life be like if I started guitar earlier? But it's more of like a cheeky thing, because I just believe in myself that I can learn the stuff that I want to do, and I've got fantastic teachers, and I share what I learned from them with you guys. So I did graduate college, and then I was like, all right, let's go back to Dallas, because I don't like living in Cincinnati. And I was like, I'm just going to continue my video business. But that's not how life worked. I shot a pretty high-profile musician in the Dallas area, and they didn't really want to release the videos from the performance that I recorded. I thought I'd get a big windfall of clients off it, but it just didn't work that way. And I was just up the creek for a while. So I was living with my parents, and like I didn't know what to do. Like, I was doing my video business, and now my video business wasn't working. So I would literally go on Craigslist, and I would look for jobs in the video thing, and I'd just apply for them. And I really didn't get a lot out of that. And then this was like 2017 when the whole do a digital marketing agency thing was like a really big deal. Like everybody and their dog was like advertising that on Facebook. So I ended up getting into that through a friend. It's a nice sound. Anyways, so I ended up getting into digital marketing stuff. I ended up working for a guru, very much an internet marketing guru kind of guy, and I learned a whole lot of stuff. He had a big L-shaped desk, and I sat right across from him, and I basically sat in on all the consults, and we did a bunch of really cool stuff together. Ended up trying to become a health coach for a little bit, and then I went back into the tech and marketing stuff now that I had a lot of real-world practical experience and some connections, and started to, I guess, kind of make a name for myself a little bit in this direct response marketing kind of world, and very grateful to be in the position that I am today, working with clients with Facebook ads and email marketing. And, you know, I in the evenings I play guitar and I work with some really cool people, and there's going to be more of that coming up. So one of the big things I'm going to be focusing on with my teacher as I restart with him, because I was out of lessons for a little bit because life was busy. I'm going to restart with him this coming Wednesday, and we're just going to be talking about, you know, auditions. You know, how do you get started, you know, doing this, you know. So I'm really excited about that because I've got a great background with all the all the classical stuff and how auditions work. You know, I've got a video I'm going to be coming out with where I literally hired a neuroscientist to like ultra optimize the heck out of how to practice. We did an hour-long interview, and you guys will get to see some of that and some other stuff that I've, you know, packaged into a really good teaching style. So that is everything. That is how I got started in music. Started with flute, did a little bit of piano, and then we did orchestra. We got in trouble in the orchestra. We switched over to band. We went to music school for French horn, and we got started in doing some video stuff there. Oh, and then when did I get started in guitar? I got started in guitar exactly December 31st. Was it 2018? I think it was 2018. Yep, 2018. That feels right. And my older brother, who was in the Army, this is really important. I can't believe I forgot this. Who was in the Army, he bought a $100 Jackson guitar that was just, it was not a good guitar. It could have been by any brand, but this guitar was not a good guitar. You could not play the high E string on it. Even like with a nut replacement, the frets were really sharp right here, and I literally had like cuts on my hand when I would play it. And let me just text them because we're supposed to be playing games right now, but I'm just yapping with you guys. Be on in 10. Maybe sooner. Okay. So I got started because my older brother handed me down this guitar, and I actually want to grab one thing for you guys. Little piece of history. So when I was playing bass, I wanted to get an effects pedal, and I wanted to get an effects pedal so I could play Stream of Consciousness by Dream Theater. And I got a 5-string bass when I was 16. I still have that one. That is this guy right here. This is my Laguna Ocean 5. I got it for like $380 on my 16th birthday. So it is 12 years old. I've had it for 12 years. It's a really cool bass. It's black maple through neck, humbucker pickups. It's pretty good. It's pretty good bass. Yeah. So I had that. Still have that. And I got this effects pedal, which is the AX3000G, which was like a modeler. I had no idea what a modeler was in 7th grade. I had no idea what a modeler was in 7th grade. So we got that because I wanted to start having some effects. So I got this guitar, and I started playing through there, and I started playing through, you know, the bass amp that I had. And I just found myself playing guitar a lot and really loving it. And I was like, this is so cool. And I just started to, you know, just do like what I was doing on bass. And I just learned little riffs here and there. But I wasn't really serious about it. And then my brother was about to be stationed overseas somewhere. And he messaged me, and he was like, hey, do you want to hold on to my Misha Mansour signature Jackson guitar while I'm away for a long time? So I said, yes, of course. And so I got this really high-end guitar all of a sudden. And I was playing like every day for, you know, 30 minutes to an hour, maybe more, you know, working on a riff or whatever, and just having so much fun with it. And, you know, he gets back. Well, he actually didn't end up going, but he requests his guitar back, and so I sent it back to him, and then I was back on the $100 Jackson not good guitar. And the Misha Mansour Signature was a Jackson guitar. It's a great guitar. So I'm not ragging on Jackson here. I'm just saying I had a very cheap guitar and it happened to be a Jackson. So still in my parents' house or whatever, states away. Now, I was like, man, I gotta get a guitar. And so I didn't, I'm a huge Dream Theater fan, of course, but I didn't, so I naturally checked out those guitars for that reason, but I just really wanted a guitar that had a whammy bar on it. And so I was drawn to the JP6. I really wanted to get one in Mystic Purple. And I really wrestled with this decision for a long time, which was, should I sell my French horn? And when I did that, I really wanted to honor my parents' investment in me and not just sell it and get something, totally frivolous, like, I don't know, some computer part or, whatever. I wanted to do, it had to be something in music. And so after about, a year of wrestling with it, I did sell my French horn, and that's when I bought my Purple Majesty, which you see in the majority of my videos. I couldn't get my hands on a JP6. So I got the Majesty, and it was a fit. It's a great guitar. I love that guitar. And I'm really happy with it. And nothing else I've tried has really resonated with me as much. And really, I don't want to come across as like a Dream Theater copycat here or whatever. I just like the guitar. And I love the neck profile specifically. And if you guys have watched my videos, what's special about the Majesty guitars is, from a lot of other guitars, is that the pickups are recessed more into the body. And so you don't have to raise your hand up to get your primary picking motion. It's lower down, which is great. And actually, I did find a video of Rusty Cooley actually talking about, on one of his guitars, how he had the neck sunk into the guitar body more for this exact reason I'm talking about. I have it bookmarked. But other people have thought about this idea, but only Music Man, in my opinion, has really executed on that idea with this guitar, and that's why I'm such a big fan of it. So this was the first guitar that I really owned. I had the Jackson, and then I had the Misha Mansour Signature, and then we got this guy, and this was the one that was 100% mine and not my brother's, wasn't loaned to me. So yeah, it's great, and I'm really grateful for all my experiences. And then I started working with Alex Campbell, amazing teacher, and I'm very, very, very grateful to have a slot with him. And he has been an amazing teacher, an amazing mentor, along with anybody else who I've done lessons with. Thank you for helping me and inspiring me and leading the way, because there's not a lot of formal stuff that goes on with the whole guitar thing. A lot of it is just YouTube. A lot of it is like, hey, I figured out this thing. It's like, what I'm looking at is like, okay, well, if you want to do your, picking and you want to do it with wrist rotation, every time you do that, the pick goes away from the string. So maybe we should talk about a different movement. So that's the whole story. I really do need to run soon before my brothers get off of games. It's very important to manage my relationships and spend time with them. So thanks, guys, for hanging out. I'll look through chat real quick and throw up your questions if you got any, and we'll go through those real quick, and then I got to run. So something that I really would like to see, my favorite YouTubers, really would like to see from my favorite YouTubers is that they cover a lot of technical / actual guitar practices. I'm not sure what you mean by they cover the technical or actual guitar practices. Like, do you mean warm-ups? Do you mean like specific, like here's like my picking video where it's like, should you keep your thumb straight or bent or curved? Or like the position of the guitar. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Tonal aspects teaching always missed, and the songs exercise not sound right if the effects EQ is killing the sound or the interface is not set up right. Yes, let's talk about teaching, because this is something that's really important to me and something I try to do on YouTube. You can't do it perfectly on YouTube, but if you want to teach somebody effectively, and this is something I learned in music school from PhD people, is there's a concept called I do, we do, you do, which you can't really completely apply on a solo practice of any kind. So I do would be like, hey, here's how to do 2 + 2. You can break 2 + 2 down as 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, and that equals 4. So now we're going to do 2 plus 3. Okay, so what, Susie, what's the first part of 2 plus 3? What do we do in that equation? Oh, well, the first part, Mr. Teacher, would be that we do 1 plus 1, and then we add 3 to that, and that gets us 5. Very good. Okay, here's 3 plus 5. Okay, class, now do that. So you can only apply that so well on YouTube, because in order to retain attention span and growth and actually get this information out there, you have to structure things in a certain way, and you have to have a hook at the beginning of the video and everything like that. And unfortunately, in a way, it makes information a little bit less searchable, because I can't put up a 2-minute video about, just the thumb thing, right? Because if there's 2 problems with it. Number 1, it wouldn't get shown to a lot of people. Number 2 is that people might not even know they had the problem, so it wouldn't even necessarily be highly searchable. And then number 3, it exists out of context of the rest of the information that you need to make that information useful. And so there's some big limitations with learning on YouTube, and the way that I'm going to solve that is I do have a guitar curriculum actually already laid out that is designed to have people go through it sequentially, so that you're building each one of these things. The tricky thing about learning guitar or some other things in life is that you're assembling multiple dynamic pieces at the same time. So as much as we want to be sequential in teaching, you have to skip around a little bit in order to establish all of the parts, all of the dynamic parts, if that makes sense. Now, the other thing is, yes, as far as tone, that's why I would say most of the time, I'm playing clean, but I also like to demonstrate what does a skill sound like with all of the effects and all of the cool stuff on, because ultimately that's the reason you're learning these skills, is so that you can like watch the beginning of the Benz video. It's got all that little fun wankery in there. That's the whole reason that we learn this stuff, is so that we can use it in context and not just play it clean. So definitely there's some issues with I think some people don't understand how to teach effectively as well as they understand simply playing. And for me, that's all I can speak for, is I try to be an effective teacher by structuring the information in a particular way, answering all of specifically the questions that are like the don'ts, that are like, it's like, here's how to hold your pick. And most videos stop there. But if I say, here's how to hold your pick, and especially make sure that you're not pinching super hard, that's different. That's a little bit different information. Or make sure that, when you do this, that you can stack your finger like this, or you can put it like this. I've found that, this is the extra information right here, that if you hang these fingers loose, that sometimes that middle finger or this finger can interact with the top strings of the guitar and create extra noise. And that's why in my opinion, I tend to stack my fingers and put them like this. So that's kind of my approach for that. And then your next question, and then I'm going to wrap up here, is I've sought out private lessons just for tone for metalcore. Whenever I'm doing, I call it tone dialing, which I am going to do a video on tone dialing eventually. What I do is I'll generally, it's a lot of this information is out there, especially if you have like an Axe Effects or whatever. The problem with an Axe Effects is some people are playing a Majesty, some people are playing a Stratocaster, and those pickups are going to sound completely different. And so if you want to get a Muse sound and the guy's demoing it on Stratocaster, it's not going to sound the same as if you download that exact same Muse sound to your Axe Effects and plug your Majesty in. It's just not, because one of those is single coil and one of those is 2 humbuckers, right? So, oh yeah, Tim, yeah, we need to... Oh wait, are we connected? I think we're connected. Maybe. Probably. Just type yes if you're the guy who reached out to me and scheduled. I think you are. In which case, thank you. And I'm very much looking forward to meeting. Funny how we're just interacting here on live stream. So in terms of dialing tone, what I'll do is I'll say like, okay, let's say I want a Nickelback sound. And I honestly, I really like the song Rockstar. Okay, if I want to sound like Rockstar, just go Google and say, what did Nickelback use on X album when they recorded X song? And you'll see, oh, they used double rectifier, they quadruple tracked the guitars, and he played this guitar with these pickups. And then you go, okay, well, I've got this guitar with these pickups, and there's this rectifier amp, and then there's also this rectifier amp in my fractal. Which one's going to match best with my guitar and my setup to get closest to that tone? And then, you know, because when you start to really understand what the controls do, when you start to understand what the controls really do, and then you can start to kind of connect the pieces between how different pieces of gear relate to each other, instead of just press button A equals outcome A, press button B equals outcome B, and I don't know why it equals outcome B, then you start to get a lot more sophisticated understanding of what all's going on with this stuff. So that's my story. That's some Q&A. We've been on for an hour. Thank you so much, guys. I think I'm going to move this an hour earlier. Today it didn't work because I had some work stuff, and I just checked the poll for which day would be best for me to do this. And we'll go from there. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one, and then we'll get some more, maybe get some more production bits going or whatever. And next videos that are coming out, I think I'm going to do one on pentatonics and how I go through these in my head. There's a very specific way I have of thinking about them that's been very helpful to the people I've shared it with. And then we've got sort of second video on like how do you match which scale with which chord and to like solo and improvise. And yeah, those will be coming out real soon. Thanks so much. Thanks for hanging, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.